I wasn't supposed to be home before dusk. The Thursday client dinner in Manhattan was meant to stretch past 9, but when the deal closed early, I hopped the 6:10 train back to New Haven, craving nothing more than a hot shower and the comfort of my own quiet townhouse. As the Uber rolled down my parents' street, twilight spilling lavender light across the hedges, I spotted two cars in my driveway, my mom's silver Subaru and Dad's ancient blue pickup. A strange tightness knotted in my stomach. They rarely dropped by unannounced. Keys jingling in my palm, I pushed the door open and froze. My cardboard boxes, line the hallway like a miniature skyline. My mother stood at the bookshelf, briskly sliding my novels into a crate. Dad knelt by the console table, bubble-wrapping the framed photo of me at last year's charity gala. Mom?
Dad.
My voice cracked in the quiet. Mom startled, a roll of packing tape dangling from her wrist. Oh, honey, you're early. Early for what? Dad avoided my eyes, his jaw tightening as he secured the picture in bubble wrap. Mom offered a too bright smile. We're just helping you pack. For the move. You know, your new place. New place? I dropped my leather tote with a thud that echoed through the hall. I don't have a new place. Their silence filled the room like a storm cloud. I wasn't always the woman who wore confidence like a tailor blazer. 3 years ago, I was just a 23-year-old girl trying to make herself small in her parents' house in suburban Ohio. My name, Natalie Pierce, felt too big back then, like a headline I could never live up to. It started on a rainy Thursday night, the kind that turned our driveway into a silver mirror. I had come home late from my part-time shift at a bookstore, smelling faintly of paper and old coffee. My shoes squelched against the welcome mat as I pushed open the door, but the living room was brighter than usual. My mom, Diane, sat on the couch with her arms folded, her lips pressed into a pale line. Dad, Michael Pierce, leaned against the mantel, staring at the unlit fireplace like it might swallow his words for him. I remember the way the air carried that sharp, lemon cleaner scent. The house was spotless. Unnervingly so. It felt like they'd scrubbed the walls in preparation for bad news. Nat, Dad started, clearing his throat. We think it's time you move forward. Get your own place. Move forward. The words landed like a stone in my stomach. I'm finishing my final semester, I said carefully. I just need a few more months. Mom cut me off, her voice soft but unyielding. We've already found a studio downtown. Tiny but manageable. We thought we'd help you pack this weekend. There it was, the decision already made. I felt the sting first behind my eyes, then the tremor in my fingers. I balled them into fists so they wouldn't see. You're packing my things? Without even asking me? Diane's gaze flicked away, as if my hurt was too bright to meet. We just want what's best. You need independence. Independence. The word tasted like metal. It wasn't an offer. It was eviction dressed in concern. Behind me, the grandfather clock ticked too loudly. Each second stretched, a cruel metronome to my silence. That night, after they went to bed, I crept into the attic and pulled out a dusty cedar box that belonged to Grandma Rose, my late grandmother. Inside lay a silver locket, cool against my palm. When I opened it, her looping script on a tiny slip of paper read, "The world will try to shrink you. Don't let it." I pressed the locket to my chest. The words thudded through me like a second heartbeat. By morning, I'd made my decision. If they wanted me gone, I would go on my own terms. I would become someone they'd never dare to underestimate again. I still remember the morning after that night, the air in my tiny sublet apartment thick with the scent of burnt coffee. I had cried until my eyes felt sandpaper raw, but something in me had settled overnight, a quiet resolve that surprised even me. If my parents believed I was destined to fold under their vision of my life, they were about to learn how stubborn their daughter could be. I took every shift I could at the neighborhood bookstore, the one with the squeaky back door and a cashier's counter worn smooth from decades of elbows. By day I stacked hardcovers and inhaled the comforting musk of paper and ink. By night I studied marketing courses on a battered laptop whose keys stuck like old chewing gum. Sleep became a rumor, but the flicker of possibility kept me awake far more than caffeine ever could. It was at the bookstore that I met Marian Blake, the kind of woman who could silence a room with a single, amused glance. She was in her late 50s, a retired advertising executive whose silver bob framed a face equal parts elegance and mischief. One slow Wednesday evening, as I restocked a table of business bestsellers, she struck up a conversation. "You read these or just sell them?" she asked, tapping a copy of Blue Ocean Strategy with a manicured nail. "I read them," I said, trying not to sound defensive. "Some of them twice." That grin, half challenge, half approval, would become the spark of a mentorship I never knew I needed. Marianne invited me to coffee the next week, and then the next, until our meetings became a quiet ritual. She listened as I sketched out my dream of creating a boutique branding agency for small businesses, companies like the bookstore, the neighborhood cafe, the artisan bakeries that deserved more than generic templates. Marianne never once laughed at the audacity of it. Instead, she shared stories of pitch rooms and late-night strategy sessions, of wins hard-earned and failures worn like badges. More than advice, she gave me permission to believe in myself. The road was anything but smooth. There were nights when rejection emails piled up like a cruel confetti, when my bank balance hovered dangerously close to zero. I took freelance gigs designing logos for mom-and-pop shops, sometimes for little more than the price of a decent dinner. Each small victory, a client referral, a glowing review, was a lifeline. Marianne's faith became my ballast. When self-doubt hissed in the dark, her words anchored me. "Talent is nothing without persistence, and you've got both." Within 2 years, what began as a laptop on a wobbly desk grew into Aurora Brand Studio, a tiny but fiercely creative agency with a waiting list of clients. I kept my success quiet, my social media filled only with the occasional sunset photo or a vague post about busy days. My parents believed I was just getting by, and a part of me wanted it that way. Let them think I was barely treading water. Let them underestimate the quiet force I was becoming. The soft hum of the elevator echoed off the marble walls as it climbed toward my penthouse floor. I stood in the center of my living room, heart steady but pulse thrumming with the quiet electricity of a storm about to break. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the Manhattan skyline, dusky violet now, streaked with the first blush of city lights. My heels clicked once against the herringbone oak before I stopped and smoothed a hand over the velvet of the navy armchair. Everything, every deliberate detail, was about to speak for me. The elevator chimed. When the doors opened, my parents stepped out first. My mother clutched her handbag with the same prim anxiety she always wore when she expected to be disappointed. Behind her, my father's mouth was tight, his brows knit into that familiar ridge of quiet disapproval. My younger brother, Tyler, followed, eyes darting like he was stepping into a museum he couldn't afford. For a beat, nobody spoke. The silence stretched, filled only by the distant sound of traffic 12 stories below. "Lena," my mother finally said, my name brittle in her mouth. "This is where you live." I let the question hang, watching her gaze slide from the modern art piece over the fireplace to the polished brass light fixtures, the grand piano I'd rescued from a thrift shop and restored by hand. "This is my home," I said softly. "I thought it was time you saw it." Tyler gave a low whistle. "This place is insane." "I thought you." He caught our father's sharp look and stopped. "You thought what?" I asked, turning toward him. "That I was barely scraping by in some tiny studio apartment." My father shifted his weight, jaw set. "You never said much about your life here. We assumed that I failed." My voice stayed even, almost gentle, but the air seemed to vibrate. He cleared his throat. "That you'd be realistic. After all, the city chews people up?" I finished. "I know. You told me that the day I left." My mother lowered her eyes, fingers whirring the clasp of her purse. I crossed to the marble island and set a single leather portfolio on its gleaming surface. "Do you want to see what I've been working on while you were busy packing my childhood bedroom for a move I didn't ask for?" No one answered. I flipped the portfolio open and slid a single document toward them, my company's latest quarterly report, the ink still sharp from yesterday's printer. This, I said, tapping the bold header, is Carter and Lowell Designs. I founded it 5 years ago. We design sustainable, luxury interiors for global clients. That penthouse across the river?
Ours.
The hotel renovation downtown?
Ours.
Last quarter alone, we cleared 7 figures in profit. Tyler's eyes went wide. My father's hand froze halfway to the page, as though touching it might burn. I own the company outright, I continued. No silent investors. No inheritance. Just the girl you told would come crawling back when the city was done with her. The weight of my words settled over the room like the hush after a thunderclap. My mother's lips parted, a whisper escaping. Lena, I held her gaze. I didn't tell you because I wanted to build something on my own terms, without your conditions, without the quiet pity that you called love. Tyler exhaled a shaky laugh. Holy, Lena, you're a boss. I smiled at him, just a flicker, and turned back to our parents. You came today to help me move into a tiny studio, I said, letting a trace of irony curl through my voice. Now you know the truth. I'm not moving anywhere, and I don't need rescuing. The skyline beyond the glass flared with 1,000 city lights, each one a small victory burning against the night. I rested my palms against the edge of the marble countertop, letting the cool stone ground me as the silence stretched. The late afternoon sun pooled through the tall windows of my loft, throwing copper streaks across the oak floor. My parents, once so sure of every decision they made for me, stood with the careful stillness of people who suddenly know their guests in someone else's world. Mom clutched her purse strap like it was a lifeline. Dad's jaw worked as if he wanted to speak, but no sound came. Behind them, the skyline of Chicago glowed with a confidence I'd earned the hard way. I'm not here to punish you, I began, my voice low but steady. But if we're going to have a relationship, we need new rules. Mom's eyes darted to Dad, then back to me. Rules, she repeated, almost a whisper. Yes, I said. First, honesty. No more deciding what's best for me behind my back, like packing my things to push me into a life you think I should want. If you can't talk to me directly, then we don't talk at all. Dad's brow furrowed. We were only trying to help. I held up a hand. Intentions don't erase impact. You taught me that actions define us. So from now on, if you have concerns, you bring them to me. Openly. The air shifted. Mom's shoulders sagged, as though the weight of years of unspoken fears finally pressed down. Second, I continued, I want each of us to work on the habits that keep us stuck. For you, Dad, it's control. You don't have to plan every detail of everyone's life to keep us safe. For you, Mom, it's silence. You can speak your truth, even if it ruffles feathers. I need to hear your voice, not just Dad's. Her eyes glistened. She nodded, biting her lip. And for me, I added, it's trust. I built walls to protect myself from being hurt again. But if we're really going to heal, I have to let you back in, slowly on my terms. A single tear slid down Mom's cheek. Dad's gaze softened. The defiance drained from him like air from a balloon. There's one more condition, I said, my voice warming. Dream again. Both of you. Don't just live through me. Mom, take those photography classes you keep talking about. Dad, dust off the guitar in the attic. Find what makes you come alive. That's the family I want to be part of, people who choose their own joy. For a long moment, the only sound was the hum of the city below. Then Dad stepped closer. I can do that, he said, his voice rough. Mom reached across the counter, her fingers trembling as they found mine. I want that too, she whispered. The tension that had knotted my chest for years began to loosen. This wasn't surrender, it was balance. For the first time, the power between us felt shared, earned, not taken. I gave their hands a gentle squeeze. Good, I said, allowing a small smile. Because that's the only way forward. I watched them from the terrace that wrapped around my penthouse like a quiet embrace. The city below glittered like 1,000 unsent letters, each window a story I would never fully know. For the first time in years, The ache in my chest, the one I'd carried from the night I left home, began to ease. Mom's voice floated through the open sliding doors, softer now. She and Dad were helping each other stack the empty teacups. Their movements were careful, almost tender, as though every gesture carried an unspoken apology. They hadn't said the words outright, but they didn't need to. I had heard it in the pause before Dad offered to clear the table. I had seen it in the way Mom's eyes kept finding mine, her gaze no longer defensive, just searching, hopeful. A gentle breeze lifted a lock of my hair across my cheek, and I thought of the day I'd left. My hands had shaken then. I'd clutched my grandmother's silver locket so tightly it left a tiny crescent-shaped mark in my palm. That same locket rested against my collarbone now, warm from my skin. I traced the filigree with my thumb. Grandma's last words before I left home still echoed, "Don't let their fear decide your life." At 22, those words had felt like a shield. Tonight, they felt like a bridge. Inside, my younger brother, who had barely spoken to me since college, laughed quietly at something Dad said. The sound startled me, not because it was loud, but because it carried a note of possibility I hadn't heard in years. I stepped back into the living room. "It's late," I said gently. "Let me call a car for you." Mom reached for my hand. Her grip was tentative, as though testing if I'd pull away. I didn't. For the first time, holding her hand didn't feel like surrender, it felt like choice. As they left, the city lights bled into the night sky, a soft halo around every rooftop. I closed the door, leaning against it for a heartbeat. Grandma's locket pressed warmly against my heart, a quiet reminder of how far I'd come. "I came home early," I whispered to the empty apartment, "and found more than I ever thought I'd lost." A slow, certain smile found my lips. Whatever came next, it would be on my terms, strong, steady, and free.